Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, our Moodle Integration Spotlight featuring Saylor Academy. Today, I'm going to give you a quick summary of who we are and then dive into our Moodle integration and how it benefits teams like Saylor's. If you have any questions, please go ahead and post those in the Q&A window. That's accessible in the panel, either on the right or bottom side of your screen, and we'll be monitoring those questions as we go. If we don't get to your question right away, don't worry. We will be taking some time at the end of our webinar to answer as many of those questions as we can. And we are recording this webinar and are going to send the recording out to you after the webinar is over. Let's get started. My name is Cody, and I'm with Accredible's marketing team. If you're not familiar with Accredible, we are the world's leading digital certificate and digital badging software. Over 1,000 companies trust us to issue their digital badges and certificates, and we issue over 1 million credentials each month. Today, I'm joined by Sean Connor, Director of Student Affairs at Saylor Academy. Sean has over a decade of experience at Saylor, building and managing communities and promoting student engagement. He also holds a Master's of Arts in Secondary Education and Teaching from Bennington College, and Sean will be sharing some of his experience using Accredible to issue certificates for Saylor's Moodle students. With that, let's dive into who we are. Moodle is our focus today, but it's good to know that at Accredible, we provide support and guidance for all aspects of your credentialing initiatives. And that's from planning and design to deployment and post-launch. And we are the only credentialing platform with full white labeling functionality, the only platform with a streamlined recipient sharing experience, and we have the distinction of being the highest rated enterprise digital credentialing software on independent review sites like G2, Capterra, and TrustRadius. We are proud to be IMS certified, SOC 2 certified, Section 501c accessibility compliant, GDPR compliant, and more. I could go on. And we work hard to ensure that we keep ahead of the curve when it comes to security and technology. That's important to us, but nothing is more rewarding than knowing your software and services genuinely make people happy. That's it. That's really that they make a difference. Our reviews, our average rating on G2 are the biggest source of pride for me because those are real, unalterable insights from Accredible users. But anyway, let's move forward. Like I said, we issue over 1 million credentials each month, so this top figure is consistently going out of date. We're closer to 20 million credentials than 15 now, and our team has implemented digital credentials for over 1,000 organizations globally, where we have a small sample of customers here. It's a general rule. You are going to interact with an Accredible customer today. Whether you're using a computer that has an Intel processor, maybe you're shopping for home supplies at Lowe's or running an Android app. You could be flipping a Schneider electric light switch or sending a message over Slack. Or the biggest one, you could be using any of the thousands of services that rely on Google Cloud. And we don't get to 1,000 customers by accident. No one does. Everything that we do at Accredible is about furthering credential technology and ensuring success for our customers. But that's enough about us. Let's talk about digital credentials and Moodle. To start off, I want to differentiate between digital credentials and PDFs. And Sean, you used PDFs before Accredible. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
I can, yeah, thank you. Before we started using Accredible, we were using PDFs native to Moodle, our Moodle LMS. It was okay. It was pretty straightforward, fairly vanilla, if you will. Students would get emails, they could download it. And I think in 2014, early 2015 is when we really started moving through Accredible. And students liked, and I liked the immediacy and the flexibility of the credentials. People share them on social media. We've started to see more and more LinkedIn and especially Twitter, which is really nice. Our executive director shares those back to us in Slack as kind of a just about every morning inspiration for us lately. So that's really exciting. I think a lot of our students are in places where they're also sharing them in places that are less visible to us. So WhatsApp is a major platform in many parts of the world. So I'm sure our certificates are showing up in WhatsApp groups and in things that aren't LinkedIn that I'm not even necessarily seeing. One thing I like, I want to talk about how the web view of the certificate is dynamically created, which allows for updates. And we're issuing a few thousand credentials a month. So if we need to update the date issued or the grade the student received, or especially their name, it matters. The easier it is for us, the better. It's very convenient for us. If we were still generating just static PDFs, I think we'd probably be I'd probably be on with our tech team a lot, asking them to literally, go in our database and delete rows so that we could reissue a PDF in many cases, and that's just not tenable at any kind of scale.
Great. Thank you for that, Sean.
Sure.
So by default, you'll have access to some options within Moodle to send out PDFs to your learners, and PDFs do serve the purpose of being a thing that you've sent out, but they are fundamentally lacking in a few ways. And the first I always like to talk about is security. So your credentials are directly tied to your brand. If it's easy for someone to fake a credential from Saylor Academy, their reputation drops because they've got people running around saying that they've taken courses they haven't. And PDFs are easy to fake. I'd like to think of security in terms of the barriers to fraud. So for a PDF, the barrier is someone editing the PDF in a software like Mac Preview, or having basic Photoshop skills, which I think we all know a 12-year-old can use Photoshop. So if you compare that to digital credentials, like through Accredible, your default, it's going to be as hard to falsify or hack a credential as it would be to hack a national level bank. And then if you're issuing your credentials and having them secured on blockchain, which we have the option for, the barrier then becomes simultaneously hacking 51% of all of the distributed ledgers that exist in the world. And if you're not familiar with that, it's effectively impossible to do. And if somebody's doing that, they're probably not going to be doing it to falsify a credential. So PDFs are not secure, but they're also not easily verifiable. Whereas with a digital credential, you can click verify right on the credential page to see that the credential is what it says it is. And if security isn't on your radar, I do want to just pose the question for thought for you and your team. Do you know what credential fraud costs your organization today? And like Sean mentioned, PDFs are static, so you can't regrade an assessment or make an amendment to them. And students can't do something like updating their name. Digital credentials, on the other hand, give you the ability to change scores or add evidence. You could rescind a credential if necessary, or change your designs and have that update in real time. And of course, playing into that, with a PDF, your students are in control. They own that, they own the data. But with a digital credential, it is persistent and it is owned by you. So as the issuer with a digital credential, you retain full control over that live version in perpetuity. And then expensive versus cost effective, the nature of this differs from organization to organization. But in every situation with PDFs, someone is generally overpaying to make things work, or they're spending an inordinate amount of time to make sure their PDFs go out and go out properly. Whereas digital credentials are going to plug into existing processes so you can have them go out automatically, like Moodle. And the controls built in there make it more effective to manage everything through a digital credential software. The last point is the biggest, and Sean mentioned this too. It's visibility, it's shareability. To share a PDF, your learners are taking a screenshot or a photo and uploading that to a social profile, and that's what we like to call a ghost share. Your name might be on it somewhere, but it's effectively invisible and largely useless to you. The digital credential instead is a persistent online thing. So when it's shared on LinkedIn or Twitter or any other social channel, there's a backlink to the live version of the credential, and that's sending traffic to your site. So a platform like Accredible is also then going to gather data for you on social share. So you can see in a dashboard how often your credentials are going out and who your MVPs are. And by default, when somebody is sharing on social channels that you have visibility into, your organization is getting tagged. So you, like executives at Saylor, can share that back to your team and have them walk in the morning with their coffee and see great news about the courses that they're taking. All right, with PDF versus Credential out of the way, let's talk about configuration for Moodle. So this slide is all images and no text because the configuration is extremely straightforward. If you have installed or configured any Moodle plugin, most of this is going to look very, very similar to what you've already done. You'll find the Accredible plugin listed on the Moodle site and just click to install to start that process. And if you have multiple environments, you get to choose whether you're going to install Accredible on test or live. And you'll get the option to continue, review any checks that Moodle might be doing. And then you will have to, of course, once the installation is done, upgrade your Moodle database. And what that's doing, it happens for any plugin that needs to touch the database. It's giving Accredible the ability to write information into the Moodle database so that you get some of the information from Accredible and the certificates inside of Moodle, and you don't have to go out to a third platform. So with all of that done, and that process generally takes a few minutes, and it's clicking through a wizard, so it's extremely straightforward. You just hop into Accredible's dashboard, which is the bottom right here. You grab your API key, which I've obfuscated so that you can't use the API key that we use for a test account here. And you'll just paste that back into Moodle. So a few minutes, a few clicks, you're basically walking through a wizard and you're up and running. If you've already got an Accredible account and a Moodle account, this should only take you 5 minutes. If you have to create accounts for both, it might take you 20. So with that installed, you can add any number of Accredible activities into your courses. There's no limit on how many activities you can add. So you could have one course where you issue multiple credentials, or you could add credentials to each of your 400 courses. The important thing is that when you do create the activities, you set up a logical name for each one. The name is important because if you're showing the activity to students, they see the name you set. And you can see that in the example here with Saylor's time and stress management course. Somebody is able to just look at that as they view the course information. And with the activity in place, you'll get a whole suite of settings to play with and options to automatically generate credentials based on some criteria, which you can see on the left-hand side of the slide here. So you could use activity completion tracking. You could automatically issue credentials based off of course completion, and even tie the activity and credential to a quiz with passing grade percentage. So Sean, could you talk us through how you have your criteria configured?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks, Cody. And I just want to mention too that we choose to, and this may be getting ahead, but we choose to show the Accredible activity to students in part just for sort of transparency. And if they've already earned a certificate, they can click there too to see the certificate they've already earned. But we could also choose to keep it hidden, but the logic is still there, so it would issue. Our criteria is, as it happens for us, is pretty consistent. We issue certificates based on a 70% passing score on a final exam across all of our courses. And then some of our courses have a second exam recommended by ACE, the American Council on Education, recommended for credit. And those courses then have that second exam. So like Cody was saying, in that case, we have 2 Accredible activities in a course. And they're just based on that exam. We could have and may in the future set up different logic in our LMS we could have kind of any arbitrary logic leading up to that exam in the Moodle LMS, and then be issuing the Accredible certificate then just based on that exam too.
All right, great to hear. And of course, for context, like Sean said before, they issue thousands of credentials every month. So that score check and that activity is running thousands of times and issuing credentials for the people that have passed. So let's take a look at what some of that experience is going to look like for the students. We've got two sample images here, one of a completed course activity and then links to a student's completed certificates. Sean, could you cover how you're displaying this information to your students?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. We make, like I said before, we make the Accredible activity visible to logged in students in the course, and it shows up as well then in the course sidebar as well, the navigation sidebar. So if they haven't yet earned their credential, their certificate, it will take them to a screen that essentially says you haven't earned this yet, and then they can find out what they need to do that. But lots of transparency there. But once they have earned the certificate, it's displayed in place, and they can click on that to follow through to their live certificate, of course, with the login link. And we also use a fairly simple plugin using Accredible's, I'm told, fairly easy to use API. Cody didn't tell me to say that. I asked our tech guy, and he said it was easy to use API. So we have a plugin that uses SSO links, kind of tokenized links, so students can click that and get right through to their certificate logged in from their Moodle dashboard. So for example, if I've completed 5 or 10 courses, I have a block on my student account dashboard that has that, and then I can click through on any certificate, get through, request a name change, whatever it might be that I need to do, hide, unhide, all those other things that students can do. And so that sort of self-service has made things a lot easier for us. We always recommend certainly that students can create an account with Accredible if they want to. That it gives them kind of long-term access, certainly, and they're not strictly depending on us. But having that single sign-on link has been very, very nice. It's cut down a lot of confusion for students on how to access and how to print and share and verify and do all the things they want to do. It's resolved a lot of issues on our end.
Excellent. I'm really happy to hear that students are getting good experience out of things, and that it's just that one SSO click for them to get access. So what about your visibility as an admin? What do you see in Moodle?
Yeah, sure. If we click on the activity, we get the sort of default view is a class roster that shows all the people who have earned the certificate so far with a link to that certificate and the certificate ID number. So that's often quite convenient if a student is asking, hey, where's my certificate? I can go right over to Accredible and log in, or I can just be in our LMS if I'm already logged in there and do a page find and see, has that certificate been issued? If so, what's the link? I can get that right to the student. But if there's any oddities with email addresses, I can see that. I can compare the email address the student is emailing us from, or what we have in the LMS and what they're telling us it should be, and if there's any mismatch there, because that's kind of an important way that our element that Moodle is talking to Accredible and matching up certificates with accounts is through that email address. So that's also really easy to see just at a glance. And then if we need to, if there's sometimes there's a misfire, technical issues, whatever, a student has passed an exam, but they haven't, the certificate hasn't been issued, Moodle hasn't fired the plugin, whatever's happened. It's really easy. That shows up then as a usually hidden part in the Accredible plugin settings that will ask me to manually issue certificates or issue certificates that haven't been issued. It's very easy. I can check a box next to a name and hit save, and then that runs through the plugin and issues a certificate in that student's name. So very straightforward.
Great. I like the idea of a streamlined experience for both you and your students. All right, so going on to the Accredible side of things, I want to start off by saying that, nobody should need to hire a graphic designer just to start issuing credentials. If you have one or if you contract with one, they can upload custom designs here into the Accredible platform. But we offer tons of templates out of the box. Think borders, layout, background. If you want A4 paper, portrait, or landscape along those lines. And there's also elements that ship with the software. So ribbons or shapes or signature lines to get you started. And more importantly, the Accredible designer is going to use your custom attributes to pull information from your database and then put that on your certificates. So Sean and Saylor really do take advantage of this the way that we want people to. The template we're seeing here, I think, is used for multiple courses, and then group course name is pulled in to differentiate from one course to another. So instead of trying to manage and create extra overhead issuing 12 different credentials or managing 12 different designs for 12 different courses, you can have one that serves multiple courses. And I mentioned previously that the digital credentials are editable and not static. And this designer is where you really unlock the full power of that. So if Saylor were to rebrand tomorrow, they could go into this design, update the logo, and then every credential they've ever issued would now have that new logo on it. So Sean, you did something similar to that recently, right?
We did, yeah. So we had an old staff person at Saylor whose signature was on some of our certificates. When I say some, I really mean many, but sort of a subset of the groups that we have. We issue a lot of certificates. So rather than shutting down those groups, I could have shut down those groups, started a new group with a new template, with a new signature, attached that new group to our courses in Moodle. What I chose to do instead was to just kind of replace the certificate templates right in place with a new signature. Our students were perfectly happy with that. In fact, the date remains the same, but sort of the look and feel of the certificate is updated in place. We also actually have done that too with previous certificate designs, where we made some tweaks to our template to sort of update the branding, and we just replace those in place. It's really fairly straightforward. We go in through the groups and we do that. And so the decisions on how you update those designs are really housekeeping decisions. I think we're not done updating by any means. We're going to keep doing it, and it should be easy to refresh older groups or leave them as they are, however we choose. So whether that's adding signatures to all of our certificates, including ones we've previously issued, ditto for adding QR codes, whatever it might be. The real only difficulty, depending on your need, is kind of design expertise. If you want to hire somebody or have somebody on staff to get something print ready. But I'd also say that a lot of the changes I've made to my design, to our designs, I'm a tech enthusiast, but not a tech person. And I've been able to do a lot of the changes myself without any issues.
Great. Thank you for that. So let's say something's already been designed and the course itself is laid out. What's involved in setting up Accredible to automatically create that credential for your students?
Sure. We put an Accredible activity in the course. As I've said before, a project manager, education project managers will make a group from a template that we have in Accredible, or sometimes that group, I think, can be sort of provisioned automatically. And so some information is coming from Moodle via API. Often that's the course description, full course name, that sort of thing. And then we tidy things up if we need to. We don't always need to. And we put the group ID in Moodle's Accredible activity settings, and things stay in sync from there.
That sounds excellent. So how long would you estimate, putting that in place would take you?
You mentioned this earlier too, and again, not a tech guy myself, but a tech enthusiast. I've done it once or twice, and it is probably 5 or 10 minutes. And honestly, some of that time is just remembering how to do it and logging in and then finding the things I need to do. If I were doing it pretty regularly, 5 minutes for sure. Once the Accredible plugin's in our LMS, which it is, it's kind of just a matter of clicking buttons.
Great. So, all right, design is quick. Like I said, creation is automatic once it's set up, which doesn't take very long, like we've talked about. So let's talk about management and focusing on one thing in particular, which we've touched on a little bit here and there, certificate updates. So with Accredible, you have the ability to, give power to your students, have them update things automatically, or retain power for yourself to approve or deny what somebody's doing and what they're updating. So Sean, could you walk us through how this works for your students in practice?
Yeah. We so we encourage students pretty frequently to use OAuth logins. So think your Google button, your logging in with your Facebook or Google account. Those are the two that we use. We could use others. And we have them set up to draw students' full names from there. That's for our convenience. That's purely a design choice. It's possible to use, we could be using those logins and just be pulling the students' email addresses, for example, and asking them to supply their own name in Moodle. But for most of our students, the vast majority of our students, it's really simpler for us just to have them. It's simpler for them if we just pull their names and have that name be on their account. Now, for some of those students, though, it's a nickname that they use on Facebook or Gmail. They generally probably don't want that on their certificate, particularly once they get to the point where they want to share it somewhere, which may be the first time they notice this, they want to share it. And like, that's not my name. That's not what I want my employer or school to see. So it's for us, it's about 1 or 2% of students, but we issue a lot of credentials. We issue thousands of credentials. So students can go on and we have Accredible has help for this. Then we have help for this too, steering toward Accredible and saying, here are the steps. But students can use one of those single sign-on links. This is going back to something I talked about earlier. And another reason why that's very convenient for students and very convenient for us is that students can click in, go through very easily if they're signed into their certificate, request a name change. And what that does is generate an automatic email to our support staff, which is me and a couple of my colleagues. And we can look at the name change. And if it seems straightforward, we can just click approve. I don't need to sign into Accredible again to do that. I don't need to go to Accredible to do that. It's kind of like accepting a calendar invite. I can approve or deny. And, very rarely, if I want to go into our LMS and verify something, I can do that too. That adds a couple minutes. But generally speaking, it's pretty clear that we're going from, a nickname or a short version of a name to a full name. And I can just very easily go ahead and say, yes, students are happy, we're happy. So yeah, the example that I give is, Sean C could be changed to Sean Connor. That's obvious to me. I just click approve and it's kind of done. It's a small percentage that want the changes. Again, like I said, usually 1 to 2%, but 1 to 2% of a lot. It's quick. It's saving us time. It's saving students time. It's something that I definitely appreciate.
That's great. All right, so thank you for all that, Sean. And to recap the other stuff that we've gone over here, configuring Accredible is going to be as easy as any other plugin that you have for Moodle. Only takes a few minutes. You can use unlimited activities once it's done, and those activities can automatically create certificates for you based on whatever passing criteria you decide to set. The certificates that get created are displayed for both you and your students pretty seamlessly. The Accredible experience is then tailored to make things easy for your users to share their certificates. And Accredible's design tools and the automation options that are there mean you won't have to spend a ton of working hours managing the credential issuance. And of course, it's then easy to go back and make retroactive changes. And of course, the first point that we covered, digital credentials are far away different from and better than PDFs that you might be leveraging today. So I'll go to questions now. If you have a question you haven't asked, please post it in the Q&A window. I will try to get to as many of your questions as possible here. And I do apologize in advance for paraphrasing any of the questions that have come through. So the first one that I have here is more of a comment than a question. I didn't get to take notes on configuration. Please provide a summary. If you are looking to install or configure Accredible and you didn't get enough information during that little walkthrough, send us a message in the chat. We do have more detailed walkthroughs that we can send you, and our team can actually hop on and assist you if you have a further or more technical need or questions. All right, the next one that I have here, how does Accredible differ from the Badger backpack? I'll say that the backpack is a pretty simplistic offering. They don't have certificates, they don't have blockchain credentials. It's really a diminished experience. I'm not really able to do a true one-to-one right now, but our team is really well versed in doing side-by-side comparisons. So if you have any sort of comparison that you want us to do, ping us in the Q&A again, and we will get a session set up for you to do that.
I'll just let me just
Yeah.
jump in real, just kind of a comment on my end too that occurs to me. The Accredible wallet view, for example, is something that we use. That's convenient. I can send a student a link to all of their certificates. Not exactly a Badger backpack, but just something that pops in mind that I use pretty frequently in talking with our students.
Gotcha. And to shed a little bit more light on what Sean just mentioned, Accredible by default is going to give recipients a wallet. So tied to their identity as a recipient, if they've earned credentials and they have multiple credentials to their name, everything will show up inside of the Accredible wallet. And that is, whether it's a membership and a credential from a course that they've taken or credentials from different courses, even from different issuers, everything gets centralized to that student's identity. All right, the next question I have here, is it useful to use QR codes in diplomas? So I think I'll also let Sean answer that because it sounded like you had some ideas, but what we find is that people like to print things, and for that, you want to have a design that's print ready so students can actually print that off for you. But also, once it's printed, by default, if nothing exists on there, you're losing the link to the digital version of that certificate. By having a QR code on it, anybody can scan that credential and then can get taken to the live version of that credential where they see all of the information that belongs to that student. So Sean, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, sure. I'm kind of the QR enthusiast of our team. Not that means I always get my way, or I would like QR codes on our business cards, for example. But it's kind of on my radar to add QR codes to certificates. Things being what they are, like Cody was saying, a lot of our students do want to print out a certificate, sometimes just for their own pleasure, and that comes through on social media, pictures of a certificate on a wall, which is great, is gratifying. But we try to facilitate running students through, for example, the verification process. If an employer, in one case, we have a professor who uses our courses with their students and wants to be able to make sure that the certificates they're seeing are real and actual. And so, I've run through the verification process with that professor and, said, here's how students can supply you links, or, you can use the certificate ID, for example, as part of a link, or enter it into Accredible's verification page. QR codes would just streamline that process on the certificate. So that's something that I probably like to do. They'll probably start showing up. And again, I think we would just, in most cases, update all of our group designs to include the QR code in one go.
All right. Thank you for that. So I'm seeing a couple more questions here, but the rest of them do seem to be outside of the normal scope of this webinar. So if you have a question that we did not get to, someone on our team is going to reach out to you right after the webinar is over. Thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you again, Sean, for providing your insight. It's been really useful to me and hopefully to all of our attendees. Anyone who's on here, you can get in touch with our experts at any time from our website, accreditable.com, or you can sign up for a free trial account of our software, and our team will assist you in proving out your Moodle integration. We've improved the issuer and the user experience for tons of organizations using Moodle, like Saylor. So chances are we can help meet your needs as well. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Cody.